Welcome in, folks, for another edition of What's Bruin. I am your host, Chris Nozick, joined by the one, the only, the amazing Dominic Tiano. Dom, how are you today?
I'm all right. Getting over something. Don't know what it was, but glad
We're
it's
glad
away.
that you're here with us and glad that you're feeling a little bit better than you had been. Well, I think we got to start right off with it. Were you able to get caught up on last night's game? I know it's a late one for you, so you usually get caught up next day.
No, I stayed up and watched the whole thing.
Oh, you did? All right. Then.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's been a rough West Coast trip. So let's work backwards a little bit. Thoughts on last night's game as a whole? Lysell was in the lineup. You go with Korpisalo. Still can't manage to get over the 20 shot mark, it seems.
Yeah. Look, I really don't know what to say about it. But I will say this. Lysell, for the most part, looked pretty good. He looked jittery at times. It looked like the speed of the NHL sometimes got to him. So here's the thing. Let him ride out the road trip. Give him a few more games after the road trip. Heck, give him the rest of the season. That's my opinion. You've got to spend the rest of this time now to see what he's capable of at this level, and just playing him 2-3 games is not going to do it. I liked his first game. I liked last night against San Jose. Just let him get accustomed and comfortable with it, and then see what he can do.
Yeah, I'm excited that he'll be back in the lineup again tonight against a better team in the LA Kings. I was glad to see that he got the call for the road trip. And obviously not great to see Kostelic have to be sent home on the trip. So hopefully they don't need to fly somebody else out there. I wouldn't mind seeing him get the rest of the season. I hope they call up a couple other folks as well. I'm sure we'll talk more about that tomorrow when we're talking all prospects as to who. But I really wouldn't mind seeing that at this point. And, of course, James already jumping in the comments. Them not challenging that goal seems like they definitely wanted to lose that game.
No.
We had to talk about it.
I'm just going to say one thing about it, okay? And hear me out, Chris. Let me finish it before you jump in with whatever.
You go ahead.
Okay? Cale Makar does it, and he's hailed as a brilliant, smart hockey player who did something that nobody else thought of before. It happens against the Bruins, and all hell breaks loose. Let me explain offside to you. Being deemed in possession only counts when you're skating backwards over the blue line. Because the puck was released before entering the offensive zone, it is now a delayed offside. Once everybody tags up, San Jose can touch the puck again. Think back to Cale Makar doing this last season, okay? Yes, under NHL rules, he was in possession of the puck, but it's not offside until he touches the puck. That is what delayed offside is. Joe Sacco, in his press conference, said that from what they saw, he was not in possession of the puck, i.e., he did not touch the puck. I guarantee you the players on the bench and the players on the ice know, because players know whether he had touched the puck or not. We, unfortunately, did not get a highlight of the blue line cameras, both sides, to see whether he was actually touching the puck before his teammate tagged up. If he was not, it is not offside. If he did, it is offside. You have to take Sacco at his word, saying that the video did not show him in possession of the puck, i.e., he was not touching the puck, therefore not offside.
Yeah, and there's one point too that I think is crucial, as you had mentioned before we jumped on the air. The onus is on the Bruins to prove that he was touching the puck and that it was offside, as opposed to
Right.
the call that was already made, which was that he was onside and not touching the puck. So that definitely goes into some of the decision making process. And even now, I look at the replay. I truly believe that puck was touching his stick. So I will still say I think he should have challenged it. I understand the argument against not challenging it. So last night, as I'm watching it, I'm sitting here going, you have to challenge that. You still have to send the message to your team, your players, that you are behind them. Now, go ahead.
Back up to the part where you believed he was touching the puck. You have no evidence that he was. Camera angles. How many times have you seen a camera angle to determine whether the puck had crossed the line? You have 3 angles showing that the puck did not cross the line until you look at the overhead angle, the one directly above that clearly shows white ice between the red line and the puck.
No, I agree. I am open to the idea of them having a different angle that we have not seen.
They do have one. It's called the blue line cameras, and the Bruins have access to those cameras.
And I don't think there's a shot on the bench of the coaches where Chris Kelly's looking down at the iPad, and it's pretty clear to me that he thinks they should be challenging it, and it sounds like he's getting word that they should be challenging it, because when Joe Sacco says, no, we're going to let it go, he looks back at the iPad and looks at Joe Sacco and basically kind of has that, are you fucking kidding me? Are you serious? We're not challenging this look? And because of that, I think it was Sacco's call. And again, I'm not as bullish as I was on it last night, but between how Chris Kelly was reacting to Joe Sacco's call not to challenge it, the angles that I have seen, and the fact that this isn't the first time we've seen Joe Sacco fail in a moment to make a big decision, i.e. take a timeout when he should have, or challenge a goal that he should have, or this isn't the first strike for Sacco. So until I have concrete evidence that I should give him the benefit of the doubt, I'm not giving him the benefit of the doubt. Now, I'm open to that evidence, but until I see it, I still think he needed to prove to his team, his players, that he has their backs in this. And as James says, with how little time was left, would it have been worth a shot to challenge? And based on the way that things have gone in video review over the course of how many seasons now, it's a coin flip. And at best, if it's a coin flip, you have to, as a head coach, at least tell your players, I'm willing to take the chance for you. I believe in what you guys say happened on the ice.
You don't know that it's a coin flip, Chris, because you haven't seen all the evidence. The only way you and I, the fans, see that evidence is if there was a challenge. That's the only time you see those camera angles that are there for the teams and for Toronto.
The other reason why is because when he's asked about it by Andy Brickley after the game is over, his explanation was about possession, not the defined regulation rule of what you were talking about when it comes to contact on the stick.
Okay, but that's what he means. You know that's what he means.
He has been very literal in what he means in the past, and so now I'm supposed to take him at his word that he means something different?
He was not in possession. In other words, he did not have the puck.
By definition of the word possession, he had possession, he just wasn't touching the puck. If it was not a delayed offsides call, he would have been deemed in possession of the puck.
Chris, Deemed in possession only counts when you're entering the zone backwards. That's the only time deemed in possession comes into effect. You're skating forward. Are you in possession of the puck or are you not? Skating forward, it's black and white. You're either touching the puck or you're not touching the puck. You're in possession of the puck or you're not in possession of the puck.
And
not
when he
not
gets
deemed in possession, which is a skating over the blue line backwards thing.
And when he receives the puck in the neutral zone, it is on his stick and it is touching his stick, crossing the blue line. And it's only after both the blade of his stick and the puck cross the blue line where his stick completely comes
Chris,
off of the puck.
You know, like I do, that the blue line is considered in the zone, that the puck is in. So if the puck starts in the neutral zone, the full width of the blue line becomes part of the neutral zone,
that's
not
why
the outer edge.
That's why I said the puck and the blade of his stick. There is an angle of the shot where you can see the blade, the angle of his stick as he's lifting his stick to puck handle, and the puck is on his stick. He goes from the forehand to the backhand over the blue line, and then comes off the backhand and goes back to the forehand, and it's touching his stick the entire time. Now,
you're perceiving that, Chris.
I am.
Okay.
Because that's the only evidence we have. We can only go off of the evidence we have.
You don't have any evidence. You have none then. You have an angle that doesn't work.
Based on that angle,
you need the blue line angle. It's as simple as that. Okay, let's move on.
If there's a different angle, then someone from the Bruins organization has to say that we had a different angle than what's shown, and this is what we saw. Someone has to come out and say that.
We know they have it, Chris. They don't have to say it. Everybody knows they have it. They have the same angles that Toronto does.
Yeah, I agree with TOR here. He's not a head coach. He's an assistant, perhaps a good one. It's a huge difference. Again, it's not. I've said on the show before, I think there's a scenario where he enters the season next year as the head coach. I don't think so anymore. I think it's instances like this where he shows he doesn't know how to give confidence in his players that he has their back. And this is one of those things. Now, I'm open to seeing more or hearing more and seeing where it goes. But until I'm shown a different angle or I hear from someone, whether it's a player or a coach or an assistant coach that says that, yeah, we saw this based on a different angle, it is what it is. Now, I will also recognize, like you said, as it is time to move on, we're going to be talking about pixels, milliseconds, half centimeters. It should not have come down for this team. And in a season where nothing has gone their way, it's just another one of those things. Because if this was called offsides on the play, and the Sharks are the ones who have to challenge to say that it was onside, everybody's thrilled as shit. So either way, it is what it is. It just imagine if this was on Ovechkin's record-breaking goal. I'm glad it wasn't. Then the entire hockey world would be all over it.
I don't know why Twitter has gone crazy over this and why we wasted. How long have we been on?
We've been on for about
15 minutes on this subject. It doesn't fucking matter. Has nothing. There changes nothing
to do with the outcome of the game.
To the outcome, not the game, the season. Like, if this is the worst that we have to discuss about the Boston Bruins, man, I got to pick another sport because this is way down my list of things that are wrong with this team. Way down.
No, and I'll bring up Odyssey's question here. He says, hey to us, Odysseus from Sweden. I want to know what realistic center prospect is the better fit, not necessarily the best player, or have the Bees lost their identity for someone to fit in as a whole? So obviously some future conversation coming up here, which we'll definitely have a lot more to talk about in the prospects tomorrow on the prospects show. But the realistic center prospects that they have to help. Middlestad, in my opinion, has looked really good since coming over in the trade. I think he's still finding his level with the team.
What's he got? 4 points in 7 games?
Roughly, yeah. And he's helped the power play. He looks good. I still think there's another level he can get to as he continues to get comfortable in Boston.
Give him legit wingers and see what he can do.
That too. That too.
Like, I mean, we're discussing an offside, non-offside call for 15 minutes when there's better things to discuss.
Yeah, I mean, let's go back to Fabian Lysell. What did you? I liked his game overall. Not a lot that I really have to complain about when it comes to what he was able to do. I do think there's a little bit of confusion from some, not necessarily everyone, about the type of player that he is. Yesterday, I thought it was great. He had that shoot first mentality that we always hear about, but he's a playmaker.
He's a playmaker, and I think that's why in Providence we saw Merkulov with Patra more than we saw Lysell with Patra, because Merkulov is a shooter, Patra is a playmaker. Lysell is a playmaker, Patra is a playmaker. The two just don't fit.
So my question to you is, who fits next to a Fabian Lysell type? A playmaker on the wing who can shoot, yes, but has a better playmaking ability than a better shot.
Well, on this lineup, nobody. Like, really. I mean, I like where he is with Husnutinov and Lindholm. I was all for putting him with Lindholm. The whole Swedish connection. Lindholm is so good defensively that I don't want to say cover up some of Lysell's mistakes, but he can allow Lysell to play more of his game because of the type player Lindholm is. Like, really, I guess maybe Middlestat.
Kevin says, of course, Morgan Geekie fits with him. Kevin, I'm not separating the Geekie Zacha Pasternak line. I've done a little more diving into the numbers that we had talked about, and as a whole, the team itself scores almost twice as many goals when Geekie and Pasternak have ice time together versus when Geekie is on the ice with anybody else. So it's a big discrepancy. You know who as I was looking at it, I came up with the perfect parallel for who Morgan Geekie is. All right? Because he's got an all-worldly player in David Pasternak on the other side of him. He's Brian Rust. He's played so well next to Sidney Crosby for so long. He thrives in that role and is a consistent 50-ish point player per year. Morgan Geekie is to Pasternak what Brian Rust is to Sidney Crosby.
Are we jumping to Geekie now, or did we just get off topic?
I just got off topic a little bit because I want to leave Geekie with Pasternak. I don't want to put him next to Lysell.
Look, I'm gonna do this for you, and I'm gonna give you the Bruins depth chart on right wing. This is all the players under Bruins control on right wing. David Pasternak, Vinny Lettieri, Mark Kastelik, unless you're playing him at center, Fabian Lysell, Riley Duran, and Morgan Geekie, if you're not going to keep him on left wing. That's it for natural right wingers in this organization. Do you need to hit on Fabian Lysell? Abso-fucking-lutely. And unless you give him the bulk of the rest of the season, I would give him the rest of the season. Unless you give him the rest of the season, you are not going to know what you have, because obviously we have seen jitters. We have seen he can play at an NHL speed. He just had trouble recognizing how much faster it is than the American Hockey League. It's going to take some time to adjust for him to know what he can do and when he can do it. You're not going to learn it in 1, 2, 3 games. Just not going to happen. Craig Eagles is in the chat. Craig will tell you I am absolutely right on this. So they need to hit on Fabian Lysell, especially if Morgan Geekie is going to stay on the left wing.
So, how would you feel about putting Fabian Lysell next to a guy who can shoot in someone like Pavel Zacha?
And what are you doing with Pasternak? Like, are you putting Middlestat with
Geekie, Middlestat, Pasternak, and then you can do Hustadinov, Zacha, and Lysell.
I would do that. I would. There's no sense in putting Lysell. I would leave him with Lindholm for a couple more games, just till he adjusts to the pace of the NHL.
Oh, yeah.
And then find his shooter.
I think that's a very good move. I like him next to Elias Lindholm. I think the Hustadinov, Lindholm, Lysell line looked pretty damn good. And I do think, as I've mentioned before, this roster isn't finalized for next season. There's going to be a lot of work. And Pog says that you separate Geekie, Zacha, Pasternak when some team offers a first and a prospect at the draft. I don't separate Geekie and Pasternak. I don't. I leave them together for now until you have a significantly better option. And Kevin says, I think Geekie can get more than 50 points in a season. Playing a full season with Pasternak, 60 to 70 isn't out of the question. If he's got a full season with Pasternak, no, it's not out of the question. But in order to get that 60 to 70 point season, you have to leave him with David Pasternak, which means you have to do something else for Fabian Lysell. You find a different shooter for him. And maybe that shooter is Hustadinov. I mean, he's had a pretty good shot since he came in, too.
Yeah, but I like Kevin's possibility there.
What, Middlestat goes between Pasta and Geekie, then I'd run Lindholm anchored by Zacha and Lysell. That works, too. Kick Zacha back over to the wing.
But
I don't hate that.
It all boils down to this. They absolutely have to do this now. They have to stick with it, because I've said it on several shows now. You can't go into the off season and spend
$8 million,
5 years, $40 million on a player where the answer might be right there within your organization. You just cannot do it.
Absolutely. It anchors your entire offseason if you're throwing a bunch of cash at a player like Mitch Marner or not. And you also have to figure out what happens if you move Pavel Zacha back to the wing and he's not next to David Pasternak. Does the Geekie Pasternak pairing still work together without having Pavel Zacha in the middle? Can someone like Casey Middlestat be a pivot in that line as well? Or without those three together, is the Geekie Pasta situation basically neutralized? I don't think it would be if you can find the right center to be in the middle of them. If you're able to kick Zacha back over to the wing, now you can have a conversation about putting Matthew Poitras back in the middle. If you can't move Zacha back over to the wing, where the hell does Poitras fit in the lineup? Where does Fraser Mitten fit into your lineup? Fraser Mitten, I think, is more of a 2-year, not next season, but the following season kind of insert. But are you really keeping Matthew Poitras out of the lineup next season? After everything you've seen from him so far?
12 points in 7 games in Providence right now.
I know. Are you leaving him off your NHL roster next season?
Depends on what else they do, man. It really does.
Yeah, that's the big question. I don't think they're done. I think there's at least one other big name coming off the roster, if not two, that we aren't going to see coming, because that's the kind of move that Sweeney also makes.
Yeah. I don't know. Right now, I think they need to get Merkulov up as well.
Yeah, that obviously, we've had the conversation. Unless they need someone else on the trip because someone else gets hurt, they're probably not calling somebody up right away.
Well, they only have 12 forwards right now, so
as I say, now that they only have 12, I mean, but the thing is with Kostelic being the one hurt, based on role, is Merkulov the guy that you're calling up, or are you going to call someone up like a Jeffrey VL or someone like that?
Well, you could call Merkulov up and move Koepke down to the fourth line.
You could, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing Farinacci get a call. What have you thought of Vinny Lettieri and how he's been playing?
I think he's slowed down a lot from when he first came up.
Do you think that's because he can't keep up with the National Hockey League speed, or he's just losing that adrenaline that we've talked about before on major call-ups?
Well, I think the adrenaline is worn off, if you ask me. They've got to see their two big kids, and that's Lysell and Merkulov in the NHL the rest of the season and see what they've got. No need to call Matthew Patra up now. They know what they have in Patra. But Lysell and Merkulov, you have no friggin' clue. And you want to know by the end of the season.
You have to know what you have in Merkulov because he's the one that can, again, he's a restricted free agent, whereas Lysell, I think he's under contract for next year.
Yeah.
He's under contract for next year. That next year is the last year of his ELC. But Merkulov, if anybody's going to defect back to Russia after this year, it would be him.
You would think. But with everything that's going on back home for them, who knows what side of the fence he's on and whether he wants to go back to that.
Yeah, he may want to stay here and wait. That's a fair point there too. So, and then you've got to figure out how other RFAs in your organization fit into the situation going forward. I mean, I still think they're going to be in on Geeky, getting him renewed. MD says, how close are they to mathematical elimination?
I haven't really looked. How many games have they played?
They have 11 left.
So, and how many points?
I'm going to pull up the standings right now just to see. Let's see. They are 6 points behind Montreal for the second wild card spot. Montreal has 2 games in hand on them, as does Ottawa. Man, they're not mathematically eliminated yet, but they're getting there. They need to start stringing some wins together.
The Bruins can get to 81 points. So one more win by Ottawa. The Bruins cannot get the first wild card. 3 more wins by Montreal. And Montreal cannot, or Boston cannot get the second wild card. Or 3 Montreal wins or 3 Boston losses. So if Boston loses tonight, it's only 2 Montreal wins.
Yeah. And remember, I know there was quite a few games on the slate today.
You shouldn't be worried about the Bruins making the playoffs. What you should be worrying about is how low can they get in the standings, meaning one of the big five in the draft, and can they win the draft lottery and move up?
Okay, now here's a question for you about that real quick, because we all know that the big ticket item in the draft is Matthew Schaefer,
Mm-hmm.
right shot defenseman.
Youngest player of the, well, one of the youngest players in the draft.
So if you somehow get that first pick and you're able to take Schaefer, obviously you take Schaefer. Or would you say the Bruins should trade back a pick or two, get an extra asset, and take a center?
If it were me,
Yep.
Okay, I'm doing this not trying to show any bias. Okay, to me, Matthew Schaefer is number one. Matthew Misa is number two. Hagens is number three. I don't think, personally, that the gap between Schaefer and Misa is wide enough that I wouldn't trade down to the number two spot and pick up another asset. If the gap was wide enough, I would say, no, I'm not trading down.
Oh, sorry.
But I don't think it is.
Ryan says Schaefer's a left shot, which I might be mistaken on. I'll have to double check. Is he left shot?
Yeah, left shot.
Left shot. Okay. So are you taking him number one? Sorry.
No, I'm trading down.
Trading down.
I'm trading down to number two. I'm not trading to number three. I'm trading because if it were me, I definitely want Misa before Hagens.
But then at that point, if you have the number one draft pick, why not just take Misa and let whoever take Schaefer off the board?
Because you can get another asset. A team like Chicago, they need Matthew Schaefer before they need Michael Misa.
Okay, fair.
It all depends on how the balls bounce and who's picking number two. Then
that would be a big part of it for sure.
A team like San Jose,
they need Smith and Graf.
Yeah, I would think that they would prefer the defenseman. So I would even say, okay, throw me a pick not to pick Matthew Schaefer. I'll still pick Michael Misa number one. You can have Schaefer number two.
Right. You do some sort of deal with that team.
I don't think that the gap is wide enough for me to say I wouldn't trade down and pick up the extra asset.
Right, which makes sense. And given where this team is right now, they don't need the defenseman as much as they need the center. So what you're saying basically is prioritize the center over the highest possible talent level.
Right.
Which is fair.
The next two, maybe even the next three, be close, are centers.
Well, I was going to say, the other thing, too, is like you said, it depends on who's picking around you in the draft and what they're looking for, because you can, with that first overall pick, take Schaefer and then turn around and go, all right, who wants him? He's available. We'll make Schaefer available for trade. We want a number one center.
Yep.
And now you have 31 teams who are throwing centers at you. Some of them may be more established than others. And you might be able to get a better option than if you just trade the pick itself. So
I don't think it's as simple as that, Kevin.
Top three, I'm taking a center, even if I'm at one. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Unless somebody is throwing a pick at me not to take Schaefer, I'm taking Schaefer number one.
Yeah. Buffalo could go defenseman top 5. Buffalo could do anything if they get in there. They already have high-end talent of first overall picks on their roster, and they can't do anything with it. So the question is going to be, who do they want? And quite frankly, who wants to get out of Buffalo might dictate more anything.
And I mean,
for them.
with Darlene and Power there, do they really want Schaefer?
Yeah, right. I mean, they have Darlene, they have Power, they have someone else in there too, don't they?
Yeah, but even with Tage Thompson at center, like, can you imagine Tage Thompson and Michael Misa as your 1-2?
But even then, they have Peyton Krebs, they have Zach Benson, they have Yuri Kulich, they have Jack Quinn, they have JJ Paterka. So and they just traded for Josh Norris. So right now, I think they're trying to go 1-2 Thompson and Norris down the middle. Bowen Byram was the other one I was thinking of.
Bowen Byram, yeah.
So Bowen Byram screams a draft day trade because he's a restricted free agent.
Yeah, so I mean, either way, the Bruins are going to get a good player in the top 10. Remains to be seen if they can get into the top 5 and pick. If they get top 4, they'll get a franchise-altering player. Again, let's look at the depth chart on left wing. Okay, so who's Nadinov, Lauko, Kepke, Tufte, Vial, Kuntar, Harrison, Yelvik, Hendrickson, Zellers, Nason, Spicer. We know Zellers is going to be at least 3 years away. Okay, not a lot of NHL talent there on the left side. So is Porter Martone out of the question for them?
Probably not.
So
Jason says I'd be happy with Denoyer. MD says that he wants a center, obviously not top 3, but in general.
Just the pronunciation on that, Chris, is Denoyer.
Denoyer. Yeah. Sorry, I caught it as soon as you mentioned the pronunciation. I was like, oh yeah. Ryan says, does McQueen's injuries keep you from drafting him?
Out of the top 10 for me.
And then Cam says, I heard rumor Rasmus Dahlin wants out of Buffalo. Not sure it's true. My understanding is that the conversation they had is he's not asking out right now. It's just more or less he's kind of putting them on notice that they have to start turning things around. Otherwise, he may want out down the road if things don't start to change. Which, I mean, how can you not want out of Buffalo if you're there long enough with how that direction is going for them? David also says, continue playing 6, 19, 23. Bruins go winless. I mean, they could go winless regardless of who they're playing.
Yep.
Bob says, if they get into the top 4, they could have access to a franchise-altering pick. Do you trust this management group to make the right pick? Dom, yes. Do you trust this management group to make that pick?
I trust the scouting staff. Like we keep picking apart the Bruins drafting, but you've got to look at where they are drafting, where these picks are coming from. They've lacked first round picks. They've lacked high second round picks. And since Don Sweeney has revamped the scouting department, yes, I have absolute faith and trust in the scouting department.
Yeah, and I know and we've had this conversation before. People still want to throw back to 10 years ago, the 2015 draft and all that stuff, but it also wasn't his scouting department. He, prior to being the general manager and assistant general manager, the GM down in Providence, essentially, he was the director of player development, and he was the the director of hockey operations. Neither one of those departments was he sitting there having a hand in who each scout was. I'm trying to remember. It was who was the guy who was the head of scouting at that point?
There was Keith Gretzky. There was
Thank
Steve
you.
Malcock. There's
It was Keith Gretzky at the time. He ended up going over to Edmonton with Peter Chiarelli. So that was that after the 2015 draft, Don Sweeney started putting his stamp on that draft room. His scouts, his team, and the drafting has been significantly better since. Agree
let
or
me
disagree?
let me clarify something about the 2015 draft because there's a lot of misinformation out there. Don Sweeney did not make the picks. Keith Gretzky gets blamed for the picks. Okay. At the time Chiarelli got fired, Mike Chiarelli, who is his brother, was the Bruins OHL scout. I can tell you, I've told this story a million times. In 10 years of covering the Ontario Hockey League, I've seen Mike Chiarelli in an arena once in 10 years. Okay. Bob Weddick has been in the organization now for 7 years, I think it is. He's their OHL scout now. I can see him in a rink twice a week. How we end up in the same rinks sometimes is beyond me. I think he reads my calendar and finds out which arena I'm going to and just happens to show up there. I don't know.
Point is you see
it. And now, before Alain Bissonnette became the Q scout, if Craig is still in the house, he's going to have to remind me who the Q scout was at that time and whether he left at the same time as Chiarelli did. That left Dean Malcock as the only Canadian scout. Dean Malcock used to cross scout all three, the WHL, the OHL, and the QMJHL. He made those picks in 2015. Was not Keith Gretzky. I will go to my grave with that.
Yeah, but it still wasn't Don Sweeney. And they still,
No.
and let's not forget, though, they still managed to walk away with Jake DeBrusk, Brandon Carlo, Jeremy Lauzon, and Daniel Vladar, all four of whom have become NHL consistents around the league, whether they're with the team or not. Real quick, I got to point out Kevin's comment here. He says 14 people watching and 1 like, which are a bit low on the numbers. We're quite a bit higher than that, Kevin. But I do agree with the point where he says, hit the like button. It's free. So if you are watching over on YouTube, we would appreciate that. It does help us out. And as Kevin points out, it's free. So David says, would you trade number 6? If so, what do you believe the Bruins would receive for him? If not trade him, why not?
No, I would not. And 1 year ago at trade deadline, when everybody was saying the Bruins need to go after Hanifin, blah, 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 blah. I was getting sick and tired of hearing it, that we should give Lohrei up for Hanifin. I said then that in 3 years, Mason Lohrei will be a better defenseman than Noah Hanifin, and I still believe that. So I am not trading him.
I mean, he's on his way to it. I mean, the kid's got offensive talent. He can control the puck. And, I mean, he's learning the defensive game. He's only been a defenseman for, 6 years now?
Yeah, something like that.
6 or 7 years. So, yes, Kevin, I know. You did say that at the beginning of the stream. I'm making sure I get to all the comments. But, yes, we are quite a bit higher on that. But we do appreciate all the likes. So, anybody who could do that would be awesome. David also says that they should go for Nikolai Ehlers. What are your thoughts on Nikolai Ehlers being added to that forward depth chart?
I mean, why wouldn't you? It all comes down to term and money.
Yeah. And I know there's some question. Would you go after Mitch Marner? would you throw a bag of cash at Mitch Marner to take him away from the Leafs and add him to your roster?
If we didn't have David Pasternak, I would. And because of that, I would not. And I'll tell you why. Because that will drastically impair you on what else you can do. It's going to hurt you in a lot of... Look, Mitch Marner gets a lot of undeserved flack, in my opinion. I've been watching the kid play for years, back to the London Knights, even before the London Knights. I couldn't understand at the time why anybody was ranking Strome ahead of Marner in the draft. I'm like, there's no way, man. I don't see it. I really do not see it. Today, in a redraft, would you take Strome before Marner?
No.
No.
I don't think so at all.
His flack goes back a long time. It's just not recently. I think in a way, playing with Austin Matthews hurts him, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, because that makes sense. At least it does to me, anyway. It hurts him as his reputation as a player as opposed to his actual skill as a player. In that sense, it helps him. Let's see. David says, I hear Marner asking $14 million. Asking and what you get are two different things.
Mm-hmm.
Let's be clear about that. If someone else wants to pay him $14 million, I'm okay with
Go ahead.
Letting him go. Go right ahead, especially if that team is Toronto. I dare Toronto to eat that money up. I guess the question was on Ehlers, is he coachable?
Is Ehlers coachable?
I haven't heard anything to the contrary that he isn't.
Well, let me answer that question with a question. Who's the Bruins coach that can coach?
Right. Actually, I did want to ask you about this, and I want to get back. James has a comment about Brock Besser, but I will come back to that. Through all the discourse of the coach's challenge that didn't occur and all that stuff, I did want to throw a name at you to see what your thoughts are as to whether or not the Bruins could potentially look at him. Oh, he wants to know if Mason Lohrei is coachable. Yes, Mason Lohrei is absolutely coachable. They lost him last year. How do you think the Bruins would feel about going after John Gruden?
Oh, I would love it. Absolutely love it.
Because he was on this staff for the record-setting season, and then Toronto pilfered him from you to make him the head coach of the Toronto Marlies. Well, now they have Craig Berube coaching the Leafs, so he's not going up to the Leafs. But you can pilfer him back if you offer him the head coach position of the Bruins.
I would love. You talk about a guy who can turn the defense and the PK around instantly.
And we know this team loves to build from the back out. So they're going to reassess everything from the back out.
We also know that when Gruden was coaching the defense in Boston, that they all had career years.
Yep. They all had career years. Obviously, we know Bob Essenza's pretty goddamn safe. He's pretty much got a job for life at this point. Gruden, again, Sacco's not the guy. We already know that. The question, I guess, becomes, do you offer him his old job back, or do you just say, see you later, thanks for your service, good luck somewhere else?
At this point, at this point, it has to be a clean slate. It's my opinion.
Now, here's my question. Why did he get, and it's probably strictly tenure, but you went through the efforts of bringing Jay Leach back. Why did he not get the interim head coaching tag and Joe Sacco did? Because now what do you do with Jay Leach? You brought him back. Now he's an assistant coach. Do you give him consideration for the head coaching job?
No, as far as I'm concerned, it's got to be a clean slate.
So you let Leach go, you let Sacco go,
And I let Kelly go.
and you let Chris Kelly go. So you bring in John Gruden, and then you just say hire your own staff.
Yep.
Okay.
Now, obviously, Asenza stays. The skills and skating coaches, they can all stay.
See, when it comes to Asenza, I don't think I think most coaches will look at Asenza and his track record and go, "You're the guy I'd want anyway."
Yeah.
So, and Odysseus is asking, why is Bob Asenza set for life after the season? Swayman seems to be a bit of an enigma to him. So, Swayman's issue is not a Bob Asenza cause. He missed all of training camp, and mentally, Jeremy Swayman hasn't been there all season. Whether it's because of training camp, because of the contract negotiation, whatever it is. I mean, let's also not forget that the team traded away his best friend in the offseason, in Linus Ullmark. That's going to have an effect on him.
I think Swayman needs the offseason to reset.
Absolutely.
Absolutely needs the off-season to reset.
Now, one thing I would say, and I don't know how much Bob Asenza has had a say in this, and he might be looking at a bigger picture, but why isn't Korpisalo starting more games? And I get it. You have back-to-backs where he has been. And so, for instance, Swayman will be playing tonight because of the back-to-back. But why isn't Korpisalo playing more, even when there have been nights where we've looked at Jeremy Swayman and we've been able to look at him and go, it's just not there? Why hasn't he had a shorter leash on those games? Is it simply because they're just letting Swayman get the minutes, get the reps? Because once the season is gone, the season is gone. You're not going to goaltend your way back into it.
Your hope is always that he finds his game back sooner rather than later. And if that means playing out the season as scheduled to find your game and going into the off season, at least feeling a little bit better about yourself, it makes the reset a lot easier.
Because I'm trying to pull up the numbers as far as games started. Korpisalo has 21 games started to Swayman's 50. So Swayman's already at a career high when it comes to games started.
I think the point is to get Swayman to his 55 starts.
Which is fair. If that's all it is, then I can't really argue with that, because that's probably what Bob Asenza's overall arching plan is: get him to 55 starts, and then maybe next year, what are you trying to push him to 60 starts?
No, I think they want him at 55 to 58 games. I think that's ideally where they want him to fall in.
Okay. Which, if you can do that, then you're looking for a number two who can start 25 to 30 games, and most number twos can do that. You can probably look to move on from Korpisalo at that point, because it's a lot easier to find a 30-player, 30-game starter than it is a 40-game starter. Let's see. Odysseus says Swayman's playtime feels like management wants to make up for $8.25 million.
It's got nothing to do about money.
No, I mean, when he's your number one guy, he's got to be able to start 50 to 55 games.
The season is lost. you should know that by now. I know it. I've known it for quite some time now, and so have the Bruins. To to all of a sudden start splitting time between Swayman and Corpusalo is not doing Swayman any good in getting back to what he needs to be next season. That's what this is all about. They see him between 55 and 57, 58 games. They're going to give him that. Now his mindset should be okay. I know what I need to do to get through 57 games in a season, and he can begin to prepare for that. It's a reset off season for him. But you can't all of a sudden start cutting him back because now he's not going to know what it feels like.
No, and I think if we play out the string, now that they've got the road trip in front of them, you don't have to worry about, like, you don't have to stress about getting Swayman 4 or 5 more starts in the season. You have 11 games left. So you can go to a little bit of a rotation where he plays tonight against the Kings. You can go to Korpisalo against the Ducks. You can then go back to Swayman against the Red Wings. Or you could do Korpisalo against the Red Wings and go to Swayman against the Capitals on April 1st. Like, you can still get Korpisalo a few more starts in there too. Once we start getting to that mid-April time, though, like, I would circle that game against Chicago on the 10th and say I want Bussy in that game. I want, Minton in that game. I want a bunch of Providence guys in that game just to get them some NHL time.
Yeah.
Dave, it's that Providence lineup, but in a good way this year. David says, Swayman bit off more than he can chew, in my opinion. Unfortunate Bussy at DiPietro can't be pushing for his job. David, what I would say is tune in to our Monday show when we break down the prospects, because we have talked a lot about Brandon Bussy and DiPietro. They're just not... Dom, what do you think their ceilings are at this point? I don't see them as consistent NHL guys. At most, maybe DiPietro's number 2. At most. But even then, we've seen him give up a lot of fluky goals this year.
DiPietro to me, and again, I've been watching him a lot longer than anybody in the chat here. Not an NHL goaltender. It's that simple. For a goaltender his size, he has to be playing like UC Saros to be an NHL goaltender, even a backup.
So to Ryan's question, can DiPietro play 20 to 25 games next year? He can play them, but he won't play them well.
Yeah, you can play him, but don't expect to win more than a handful of them.
Real quick, I do want to address it. David says, I'd love to listen. It's the timing. So, David, every show we put out, you can get as a podcast or find on YouTube after. All right? So you have to go to the live tab on YouTube, but they are all there. So if you cannot listen to it live, you can subscribe to the podcast anywhere you get podcasts, or you can go back and rewatch on YouTube. On YouTube, you can actually see, because we are able to, thanks to Flow Hockey, we are able to show you the clips and break down the clips. So I recommend the YouTube. Subscribe on the YouTube, and you'll get notified when we go live on there. That's what I would recommend if the timing just doesn't work for anybody who's watching. So they live there. Kevin says, what time do they play tonight? It's a 9 o'clock puck drop Eastern time. The earliest one on the road trip, minus the Detroit game on the way back. So, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But no, I would guess if DiPietro plays 25 games next year, you're winning maybe 7 of them.
Yeah, so Bussy's had such an up and down year. I don't know what to make of him anymore. Yeah, if you're trading Korpisalo, you've got to find another legitimate NHL backup.
I don't see them trading Korpisalo until next offseason. They got to try to get a couple guys in the system who can be developed, who are maybe 2 years out, and that's when you look to move on from Korpisalo. If they can get that kid out of UMaine, Boya, who we talked about on Wednesday special last week with Josh, if they can get him, then they can move on from Korpisalo a little bit sooner. But there's going to be a lot of teams that are looking at a guy like that. So,
hey, now that you mention that, if I can just take a couple of minutes here. So we know Ty Gallagher signed an ATO to finish out the year with Providence.
yeah, someone had asked about the college free agent, so we can touch on that.
And signed a 2-year American Hockey League contract that begins next year. We also saw that Jonathan Nierenberg came over from Sweden and has joined Providence. Has not signed a contract. We spoke a little bit about what that would mean if he came over, Chris.
Yes.
On last week's show. And at least this way, he's over here. The Bruins can keep an eye on him, see how he's doing in practices and stuff, because he can practice with the team. But they can also monitor his health, because he had a serious injury that kept him out of 35 of 52 games this season. So I had to do a lot of digging with the NHLPA to get clarification on this.
Oh, yes. I'm glad you mentioned it, because I did see your tweet on it, and I was going to bring it up.
So, because Jonathan Nierenberg was drafted by the Canucks 10 months prior to the new agreement taking effect between the Swedish Hockey Association and the NHL, he can sign an AHL or an NHL contract and be sent to the NHL, because he is 21 years of age.
You mean the AHL?
Yeah, he can be sent to the AHL.
Okay.
Because he is 21 years of age. Under the new agreement, unless you're a first-round draft pick, if you're under 24, you have to be sent back to Sweden. So because Nierenberg was drafted prior to the agreement, he's grandfathered, so he doesn't have to wait till he's 24. He falls under the old agreement, which is 21. So he can now go to the American Hockey League.
They still have to pay his buyout and transfer fees and all that.
Yeah, here's the cost. I got the cost.
Oh, sweet. You come with numbers.
Oh, yeah. So the transfer fee alone to what the Bruins have to pay his team, Linkoping, is $381,500, of which $20,000 ends up going to the hockey association he played in, which is the Swedish Hockey League. So $381,500. Then
I'm going to get a calculator out because I want to add them together, unless you already have the total. 381,500, you said, right?
Right.
Okay.
So there is now a $100,000 penalty because they're signing him after August 15th of last year. Okay. And if they want him out of his contract with Linkoping, they have to buy out the contract.
So the entire next year season.
Right.
Do we know what that total is?
So it's I don't have that total right with me. So when I said it would cost as much as his entry-level contract just to get him over here as his entry-level contract, I wasn't far off.
No, because we're already at $481,500, and that's before buying out the remaining year.
Yeah.
Which even at $150,000, that would be on the very, very low end because of international conversions and stuff. You're at $632,000. His ELC is $755, $780, $850, something damn near close. So James has a great question though on the subject. He says, does that money that they would pay affect their salary cap in any way?
No.
The only money that would affect their salary cap is if he were to sign the ELC and play in the National Hockey League. Then his ELC contract amount would go against the salary cap.
No. Wow. This here's where it gets confusing. Okay, the Bruins have to sign him before June 1st or they lose his rights. So let's say they sign him to his contract, but then loan him back to Sweden to finish out his 1 year remaining in Sweden. Okay, that contract spot will still affect one of the 50 contract spots that they're allowed, but does not affect the salary cap, other than the fact that all that money comes out of hockey-related revenue as an expense and is less to the player's share.
Right. What I'm saying though is his contract only counts against the salary cap if he's playing in the National Hockey League next year. That's what I was trying to get at. So, but yes, a much more detailed explanation. Couple other great questions in here as well. Let's see. Kevin says that tonight he'll be keeping an eye on Lysell and Middlestead, a few more than others. Ryan wants to know, does Svedback sign after this season? So Ryan, again, someone that we've talked about extensively on the Monday show. But no, Svedback has to go back to Providence this year. There hasn't been enough in his game. If he comes out this year, you all but effectively destroy any chance he has at making a pro life out of his career.
I just don't think he's ready.
He's just not there.
We've shown a few highlights of a lot of stuff he needs to work on that just isn't at the pro level. And
yes, James, you wonder if they are going to look at a goalie in the draft knowing DiPietro and Bussy aren't trending well. They fucking better. If they don't, then they're going to be looking at a couple that are undrafted out of college, and they're going to be throwing darts at the dartboard. I will say, I think one thing that Don Sweeney has showed is that he doesn't make he learns his lesson the hard way the first time and doesn't make that same type of mistake again. So when we talk about, they didn't draft centers to replace Krejci and Bergeron, they did. Just a lot of them didn't pan out, and they should have been throwing more of those darts. So when it comes to a goaltender, luckily they don't need someone major until 8 years from now. But that doesn't mean they're not going to start throwing darts a lot sooner. So Steve wants to know if you've made it to any Warrior playoff games yet.
Stratford Warriors?
That would probably be my guess.
Oh, yeah. You definitely.
And then Taz says, who in the Bruins system can replace Lindholm if Hampus's injury is extremely serious? Is Brunet an NHL player?
I think in time, Brunet will be an NHL player. Yes. Just not next season.
Yeah.
Look, Chris, you know me better than anybody. I'm not going to nitpick or contradict somebody else's work because I respect their opinions no matter what. Even if they're wrong, I respect their opinions. I've seen Fabian Lysell called a whole bunch of things but a hockey player. I've seen Frederic Brunet called a whole bunch of things but a hockey player. All I can say is you guys come join us Monday nights at 6:30. Chris and I do pick apart some of the prospects. We haven't had a good thing to say about Brett Harrison all season. Am I right, Chris?
Oh, God, no. I've been out on him since the season started.
It might change on tomorrow night's show, but we give you an honest opinion. We don't sugarcoat anything. We tell it like it is. In a lot of cases, we have the highlights to prove it. Maybe not
And
the
highlights. And the lowlights.
The lowlights. Excuse me, I sent you a couple tonight for tomorrow.
Yep, and we were also on we were on Walsh all season. No, not Walsh.
Walsh.
Yeah, it was Walsh. There were a couple we've been on heavy all season long.
Gallagher,
we were tough on a little bit coming into the season, and then he goes out and is third on his team in scoring from the blue line and has a hell of a year, has the bounce back season that we said he needed to have, and now he's in Providence. And he just scored his first goal the other night.
Yeah. So to get back to the question, no, there's nobody to replace Hampus Lindholm in the system right now. But
could be Matthew Schaefer, though.
I think the idea is to have one of Zadorov or Lohrei replace Lindholm and somebody in the system replace them.
Yeah, I think it would probably be Lohrei, who's the one that you look at as the Hampus Lindholm replacement. Zadorov plays a different role, and then you have someone else slide in. I mean, if you're looking at the left side down in Providence, you got Brunet, you've got Edward, you've got Ortiz now, Millman, he's on the AHL only contract, and you just brought in Monsieur for Mark McLaughlin. So you have some guys who are trying to compete for it, but I mean, the good thing is you don't need that replacement tomorrow. You have to get through this year first. So, yeah. Let's see. Is it Odysseus Odyssey? I don't know. He goes, uplifting to hear you guys have faith in Sway because mine has been tested from negotiations to on-ice performance. Same goes for different reasons, but Hampus Lindholm return. Can't count them in 25-26. I think Hampus is another one that this offseason is going to be very crucial for. I think they've done a great job in not rushing him back. Obviously, we're going to be concerned about the knee. Anytime someone fractures their kneecap, immediately around here, we're going to think to Kevin Miller. But I think one thing that went against Kevin Miller was they tried to rush him back. They did not shelve him. They did not let him recover properly and rehab properly. And Hampus Lindholm's going to be able to do that. Because hell, you can go into next season with Hampus Lindholm not in training camp if you absolutely have to. If there's a minor setback or if he's just not where he needs to be going into camp, you do not have to push him right away.
Right.
Because you then have an 82-game regular season to get him up to speed for what you hope to be a playoff push. So that's the good thing when it comes to Hampus Lindholm. And
they could have been tempted to push him back in.
I think they were. Year. I think they were tempted. So Bradbury is out as UND coach.
I saw that just a few minutes ago, and that I'm surprised.
There's going to be some really good college coaches coming up.
There's a guy I wouldn't mind as assistant coach up at the NHL level.
Here we go. And then also brought up Murenberg signing should be no-brainer. B is in need of right-hand defensive depth. So right now, we'll talk a lot more about Providence tomorrow, but if you can get Ty Gallagher and Jonathan Murenberg in on that right side on your defense starting next year, then your right side just got a lot deeper.
Well, here's the depths on the right defense. Charlie McAvoy, Henry Yokiharu, Andrew Peak, Ian Mitchell, Billy Sweezy, Max Wanner, Ty Gallagher, Jonathan Murenberg, Ryan Mast, Mason Langenbrunner, and Drew Bavero. Yes, the Bruins still hold Bavero's rights, even though he was traded in an AHL deal. It's not very good. It's not very good once you get through the three NHLers in McAvoy, Yoki-Haru, and Peak. So you've got to hope that Gallagher and Murenberg pan out.
That's what I mean, is you got to get them both in the system.
Yeah.
So that you at least build up your depth there. You take those two names out, which is where you're at right now. Your defense is screwed on that right side. Especially, if I'm not mistaken, Ian Mitchell is an unrestricted free. No, he's restricted at the end of this year. And then Yoki-Haru's unrestricted. You still got to get Mason Lohrei on a new contract.
Yeah.
Michael Callahan, I know he plays on the left side, but he's out after this season is over. He's an unrestricted Group 6 free agent.
Group 6, yeah.
And then Bavaro and Missoula are both restricted free agents. So you have some work to do on that blue line, even down the roster.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd go this far. I mean, now that you traded Carlo, yes, I would look to add one. He says that they need to add another top 4 right D.
I think Yoki-Haru can be that if they get him under contract.
I was going to say, I know some people aren't a big fan of Yoki-Haru. I think Yoki-Haru can do that as a short-term solution. I don't know if he is a long-term top 4. I think some of his struggles right now are just coming in, getting used to a new system. And let's face it, players coming out of Buffalo, they have a good track record where their new home is. So,
and at times he's looked very, very good with Zadorov.
Yes, that pairing, I really like that pairing together. So Kevin says, I wish the annoying section of Bruins fandom wasn't already setting up Minton to fail. They saw the hat trick and now expect him to be Connor McDavid at the NHL level, which, I mean, it was a sweet hat trick, though. So, kid can find the net. Middlestead has something, could be special. I'd like to see him on Pasta's line for a couple games, put 92, 18, and 24 on the second line. That would be 92 is Hustadinov, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I want to keep Middlestead down the middle.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would rather move Zacha to the wing. And as we talked about earlier, I wouldn't mind seeing a Zacha Middlestead, or actually whatever it was that we said earlier, where you got Geeky, Middlestead, and Pasternak, and then you have Lysell.
Zacha with Lysell.
Zacha with Lysell, yeah.
Back to Kevin's comment, I have to ask everybody, did you see the goal? That, granted, Green Bay's lost 3 games in a row to Muskegon, 6-3, 6-3, and 6-1. But the goal Will Zeller scored today.
I have not had a chance to watch it.
Oh my God. The backhand? Unbelievable. Filthy, filthy, filthy goal.
Speaking of which, it was on Thursday, the main goal in double OT to beat Northeastern.
Yeah.
Did you see that one?
Yeah.
Oh, he's just crouching behind the goal on his knees. So let's see. Odysseus.
I sent you that Zeller's goal. Is there any way you can get it up here for tonight?
I'll try and pull it up. Yeah. I want to get through some of these comments, but I'll work on pulling it up here. It says, thank you, Dom. Lysell has been on a barrage of negative comments from mainstream pods. He has shortcomings, yes, but I think your colleagues expect to see the perfect two-way player when recalled from Providence.
Give Chris a minute, guys, because you're going to want to see this highlight.
Was this the second goal he scored or the first goal?
The second one, the one today, Saturday or
Sunday.
Sunday.
Yeah, we have quite a few clips for tomorrow's show. Let's see. All right, so that would be this one here. Let me get it downloaded, and then I'll get it pulled up. So step 1 is being done. Now, Ryan's got a question. Has Ian Mitchell earned himself a contract?
I don't think so. maybe as an American hockey leader. I'm certainly not giving him a one-way contract.
Yeah, he's not. He's replaceable. Is really
Yeah.
the best way that I put it. Fabian and Merkulov may or probably never be close to perfect two-way, but you need to see their strengths translate to the NHL. If so, they at least are tradable to a better suitor.
Yep.
If Chikrin become a free agent after July 1st, I can see them try to sign him. I really don't see that just because as long as they have Hampus Lindholm, I don't see them going after Chikrin because you've got your left side with Lohrei, Zadorov, and Lindholm. You're not adding Chikrin to that mix.
Tell you, boy, he sure would help the power play.
Oh, for sure. I'm just saying I don't see them going after him to add him to the mix when their left side's already pretty all set. So, all right, let's see. I will pull the comment down here. Did you add a cool arrow to this one or anything?
No, I didn't, but he'll be the trailer coming up.
Here comes Carcone to the offensive zone. Carcone for Zellers. Backdoor, he scores. Golden. Here comes Carcone to the offensive zone.
Right here with the backhand. Oh, man.
Filthy, eh?
Oh.
Filthy backhand.
And that was what, his 41st of the season?
41st of the season. He became the third fastest player to 40 goals in the USHL, behind Celebrini and Roy since 2000. So in 25 years, only two players have reached 40 goals faster than Will Zellers.
Oh, man. Michael's got a good question. We had the special on last week for the NCAA free agents. Since Gleb Veremyev went to the New York Islanders, are there any undrafted college free agents on the Bruins' radar at this point?
Without giving away too much, I would say Ryan Walsh's teammate in Cornell, Dalton Bancroft, is at the top of the list. He actually attended Bruins development camp last summer.
And if I remember correctly, the book on him was his skating needed a little bit of work.
Yeah.
But that's something that the Bruins have brought in guys who need skating help before, i.e. Justin Brazeau. And they've been able to get some of them to do pretty well when it comes to kind of adjusting that part of their game.
Yeah, I would say he's at the top of their list right now. The guy I really liked, the defenseman, Prokop, ended up signing with Toronto, of all teams, yesterday or Friday. I forget which day it was.
There was I will say this too. I know it's not a forward, but there was a kid, the UConn goaltender, Caleb Tung. He looks like I know he's going back next year. I think he's a freshman right now, but he looked like he was tracking the puck very well for UConn this year, and was in good positioning. And he would be someone that I would put on the radar for maybe next year if he has another strong year at UConn. Because again, goaltending is going to be an issue for this team going forward. So I think he's doing some stuff this year to get put on radars. If I'm not mistaken, he was a freshman, or maybe he was a sophomore. I'm looking it up right now. Yeah, he was a freshman this year. So,
yeah, who asked the question? Michael?
Michael did.
Michael, if you go to Dom.Hockey, there's an article there with probably 17 names to keep an eye on.
Quite a few,
something
yeah.
like that. And if you go back to our YouTube channel and look at Wednesday's special, we had Josh Klicka from McKean's hockey on to talk about those players as well.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting that he mentioned that the crop this year, quote unquote, if you will, from the undrafted college free agent level isn't as strong as we want to believe, just
Yeah.
because there's a lot of hype around it, especially now that they're starting to hit the free agency. But there's a few that I think are going to be underestimated because of I think it was Miklinski in at Holy Cross.
Yeah.
His first season was completely destroyed because of COVID. So let's see. Jonathan says Powers needs a new contract. I hear Buffalo is going to want to pay another D-man 10 to 11 million. I mean, there's going to be a few restricted free agents. The problem is if you want to make them a contract offer, you're going to have to come up with the draft capital.
Yeah.
And any offer that requires your own first round pick, it has to be your first round pick. And that means you could be giving up the 7th overall pick, the 6th overall pick, the 3rd overall pick just to sign a restricted free agent. You have to be damn sure that you want that draft pick more that you want that restricted free agent over the draft pick. So, anyways, tomorrow, as we said, we will be going through all of the prospects currently in the system. Some of the seasons are starting to Powers signed 8 by. I don't remember exactly what contracts each player has in Buffalo. I could pull it up, but it's 8:00, and we're just about done here anyway. So, but the point still stands about restricted free agents, Ryan. So I appreciate that, though. I thought I remember seeing Powers sign. Dom, as I mentioned, 8:00, rounding everything out. We got the prospect show tomorrow, same time, same channel. So, any other final thoughts tonight?
I actually want the Bruins to win tonight when I shouldn't want them to.
Well, we got an hour till puck drop.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say Fabian Lysell gets his first point tonight.
I've been feeling like he was going to get a point on this trip. I really do feel like it. He played very well yesterday. I really think he's deserving of it. I just don't know. Is Kemper going to be the guy to give it up? And real quick, we can address Michael's last question. Any chance Pelosi signs an ELC and leaves Quinnipiac? I don't think so. Not after
I
one
doubt
season.
it.
I really. I mean, he's had a hell of a year, but if I'm Boston, I would encourage him to go back for at least one more season, get him into development camp again this year, and go from there. I'm not very many college players are going to start doing one and done, although they're going to do more now. The NIL money has come into play, but I just don't see it benefiting Pelosi. So. But yeah, hopefully the Bees can pull out a win. I do feel like Lysell's going to get that first point soon, or the first goal soon. Other than that, all I got is go Bees.
Go Bees. Get that draft pick.